The great hall of Valora shone like a dream made real. Crystal pillars rose from the floor to the ceiling, catching light from 1,000 floating lanterns. The walls themselves seemed alive, shifting between colors that had no names in any human language. Representatives from 37 different species filled the space, each delegation trying to outshine the others, with displays of wealth and power. Tahoe stood near the back wall, holding a small data tablet. He wore simple gray clothes, the standard uniform of Earth's diplomatic translation corps. Nothing special, nothing memorable. He watched the grand figures move through the hall like ships passing through calm waters. And he felt very small. The Dreth warriors came first, their scaled bodies covered in ceremonial armor that gleamed like polished metal. Each one stood over 2 meters tall, with 4 arms and eyes that burned like hot coals. They moved with the confidence of a species that had conquered dozens of worlds. Behind them came the Elari, beings made of pure light contained in delicate crystal shells. They floated rather than walked, and soft music seemed to follow them wherever they went. The oldest species in the galaxy, some said. The wisest, others claimed. The Keth delegation made the floor shake with each step. They were massive creatures, built like mountains given life. Their ambassador alone weighed more than a small spacecraft, and his voice rumbled like distant thunder when he spoke. And then there were the others. Dozens of species Tahoe had only read about in training documents. Some had too many eyes. Some had no eyes at all. Some communicated through colors, others through smells, others through vibrations in the air. The galaxy was vast and strange, and humanity was just a tiny newcomer to its ancient politics. Nobody looked at Tahoe. Nobody cared about the human translator standing quietly in the corner. Earth's delegation was small and unimportant. Humans had only discovered faster than light travel 50 years ago. In galactic terms, they were infants. Barely worth noticing. Tahoe was fine with that. He preferred watching to being watched. He had always been that way, even as a child. His mother used to say he had old eyes in a young face. His father said he thought too much and talked too little. Maybe they were both right. A hush fell over the great hall. The floating lanterns dimmed slightly, and all attention turned to the far end of the room where a throne of woven starlight waited. Queen Yuna of the Serani Empire made her entrance. Tahoe had seen pictures of the Serani before, but nothing had prepared him for the real thing. Queen Yuna moved like water flowing uphill, defying gravity and logic at the same time. Her skin was silver, not painted or decorated, but naturally silver like moonlight given solid form. Her eyes held entire galaxies within them, swirling with stars and nebulae that shifted when she blinked. She was beautiful. Not in the way humans understood beauty, but in a deeper way. Looking at her felt like looking at a sunset or a mountain or the ocean during a storm. She was something beyond ordinary experience. The Serani Empire controlled 200 worlds. Their technology made human achievements look like children playing with toys. Their history stretched back millions of years, to a time when humanity's ancestors were still learning to walk upright. And Queen Yuna had ruled them for 3,000 years. Every delegate in the room bowed or performed their species' version of respect. The Dreth High Commander, a scarred veteran named General Rock, lowered his massive head. The Elari Archon dimmed his inner light. The Keth ambassador knelt, which caused the floor to crack slightly. Tahoe bowed too, though he doubted anyone noticed. Queen Yuna surveyed her guests with those galaxy eyes. Her expression revealed nothing. She acknowledged the bows with a slight nod, then took her place on the throne of starlight. "Welcome," she said, and her voice carried perfectly to every corner of the vast hall without seeming loud. "Welcome to the summit of Valora. Tonight we feast. Tomorrow we talk. Tonight we are not rivals or enemies. Tonight we are guests sharing bread and salt. A cheer rose from the assembled delegates. Servants appeared as if from nowhere, carrying trays of food and drink suited to each species. Tables materialized from the crystal floor, arranged in perfect patterns. Music began to play. Though Taiho could not see any musicians, the feast began. Taiho found a small table near the edge of the festivities. He was not important enough to sit with Earth's main delegation, which suited him fine. A servant brought him food that looked strange, but tasted surprisingly good. He ate slowly, watching the political dance unfold before him. The Dreth general was trying to speak with Queen Yuna, so was the Alari Archon. So were half a dozen other powerful figures. The queen acknowledged each of them politely, but kept all of them at a careful distance. She smiled without warmth. She spoke without revealing anything. She was playing a game that had rules Taiho could not begin to understand. He returned his attention to his data tablet, reviewing translation notes for tomorrow's negotiations. Languages had always come easily to him. He spoke 14 fluently and could manage basic communication in another 20. It was a useful skill, though not a glamorous one. The sound of sudden silence made him look up. The great hall had gone quiet. Every conversation had stopped. Every eye had turned in the same direction. Queen Yuna had risen from her throne. She was walking, not toward the Dreth general, who had been mid-sentence when she stood, not toward the Alari Archon, who had been waiting patiently for an audience, not toward any of the powerful figures who had traveled across the galaxy to court her favor. She was walking toward Taiho. He looked behind him, certain there must be someone important standing there, but there was only a crystal wall. When he looked back, Queen Yuna was closer. Her galaxy eyes were fixed directly on him. His heart began to beat faster. She stopped in front of his small table. Up close, she was even more overwhelming. Her presence seemed to bend reality around her, making everything else feel slightly less real by comparison. "You," she said. Just one word. Taiho tried to speak, but his voice failed him. He swallowed and tried again. "Your Majesty, I think there has been a mistake. I am just a translator. I am nobody important. There is no mistake." Her voice was soft but carried absolute authority. "You will sit beside me tonight." The whispers began immediately. Taiho could hear them even through the blood pounding in his ears. The Dreth general was demanding to know what was happening. The Alari Archon's light was flickering with confusion. The Keth ambassador had stopped eating, which apparently never happened. "Your Majesty," Taiho tried again, "I do not understand. There are many important people here who deserve this honor more than me." Queen Yuna smiled. It was the first real smile Taiho had seen from her all evening. It transformed her face, making her seem almost approachable. "Almost. Come," she said, and extended her silver hand toward him. What could he do? Refusing a queen's direct command was not possible. Refusing this queen's command might be considered an act of war. Taiho set down his data tablet with trembling fingers and took her hand. Her skin was cool against his, smooth like polished stone. She led him through the crowd of stunned delegates, past generals and archons and ambassadors, who stared at him with expressions ranging from confusion to fury. The seat of honor beside the throne of starlight was made for someone much more important than Taiho. He sat down carefully, feeling like an imposter in a play he had not auditioned for. Queen Yuna returned to her throne and looked out at her guests. "Let the feast continue," she said simply. The conversations resumed, but everything had changed. Every eye in the room kept returning to Taiho. Sitting beside the most powerful woman in the known galaxy, and Taiho, who had always preferred watching to being watched, suddenly found himself at the center of a stage he had never wanted to stand on. 3 days passed after the feast. and the whispers only grew louder. Tae-ho could not walk through the crystal corridors of Valora without feeling eyes on his back. Delegates who had ignored him before now watched his every move. Servants who had barely noticed him now bowed when he passed. The change was uncomfortable, like wearing clothes that did not fit. The theory spread faster than light through the gathered delegations. Each species had its own explanation for the Queen's strange behavior. General Rock of the Dreth believed Tae-ho was a pet. The Serani were known for collecting rare things. He told his officers. Humans were new to the galaxy. Perhaps the Queen simply wanted one for her collection, like a colorful bird in a cage. Nothing more. The Alari Archon had a different theory. Humans were clever with languages, he suggested to his scholars. Perhaps the Queen needed a translator for some secret negotiation, a tool to be used and then discarded. Useful for a moment, then forgotten. The Keth ambassador simply shrugged his massive shoulders when asked. Humans were small and soft, he said. They broke easily and died quickly. Whatever the Queen wanted with this one, it could not be important. The universe held countless small and soft things. None of them mattered. But Lord Dravik of the Obsidian Reach watched Tae-ho with different eyes. Dravik was not like other delegates. His species was made of living obsidian, black stone given form and purpose. They did not eat or sleep or dream. They simply existed, hard and cold and patient. Dravik had waited 3 years for Queen Yuna to accept his marriage proposal. 3 years was nothing to his kind. They measured time in centuries. But now this human had appeared. And the Queen looked at the human in ways she had never looked at Dravik. That was a problem. Tae-ho knew none of this. He only knew that Queen Yuna kept requesting his presence. For morning walks through Valora's crystal gardens. For afternoon discussions about human culture and history. For evening meals where she asked him questions no one had ever asked him before. She wanted to know about Earth, about its oceans and mountains and forests, about its wars and art and music, about the way humans laughed and cried and loved. Tae-ho answered as best he could. He told her about his childhood in a small coastal town, about his mother who taught literature and his father who built boats, about the sound of waves and the smell of salt air and the feeling of sand between his toes. Queen Yuna listened to everything. Her galaxy eyes never wandered. Her attention never faded. She listened like his words were precious things, worth collecting and keeping safe. Why do you want to know all this? Tae-ho finally asked on the 4th day, as they walked through a garden of flowers made from crystallized light. There are scholars who know much more than me, historians and scientists and philosophers. I am just a translator. You keep saying that, Yuna replied. Her voice held something like amusement. Just a translator. Just nobody important. Do you really believe it? Yes, Tae-ho said honestly. I have no power, no wealth, no famous name. I speak languages well, but that is not special. You saved my life. The words hung in the air like frozen breath. Tae-ho stopped walking. His heart suddenly felt too loud in his chest. Your Majesty? 2 years ago, Queen Yuna said. She had stopped too, and was looking at him with those impossible eyes. The colony world of Ardith 7. My ship crashed during a survey mission, a malfunction in the navigation systems. 73 Serani crew members died in the impact. I survived, but barely. My legs were crushed. My lungs were filling with blood. The colony was burning around me. Tae-ho's hand moved without thinking, touching the skin beneath his collar, where old scars still marked his body. There was a human medical team on Ardith 7. Yuna continued. Relief workers from Earth, helping with a disease outbreak. When the fire started, most of them evacuated. But one stayed behind. He heard there were survivors in the crashed ship. He went into the fire alone. There were others, Taiho said quietly. I was not alone. Nurse Minji, Dr. Seojun. They helped too. They helped at the medical station. Yuna agreed. But you were the one who went into the burning ship. You were the one who carried me through flames when your own skin was melting. You were the one who gave me your oxygen mask when your lungs were already damaged. She stepped closer. You were the one who said, you are going to live, I promise. And then you kept that promise. Taiho remembered. He remembered the heat and the smoke and the terrible sounds of metal breaking. He remembered finding the silver woman trapped under debris, her galaxy eyes dimming. He remembered not thinking, just acting, running toward death instead of away from it. He had spent 6 months in a hospital afterward. His lungs still ached sometimes when the weather changed. I did not know who you were, he said. I did not know you were the queen. I just saw someone who needed help. I know. Yuna's smile was different now, softer, more real. That is why I searched for you, across 200 worlds, for 2 years. I used every resource my empire possessed to find one human relief worker who disappeared into a backwater medical course. Why? Taiho asked. The question came out almost as a whisper. Because you are the answer to a question I have asked myself for 3,000 years. Yuna's voice held ancient weight. I have ruled an empire since before your species learned to write. I have met billions of beings across thousands of worlds. And in all that time, I have never found anyone who would run into fire for a stranger, who would give their breath to someone they did not know, who would keep a promise at the cost of their own body. She reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were cool and gentle. I thought such beings did not exist. I thought I was alone in the universe. I am not special, Taiho insisted. Any human would have done the same. Yuna laughed. It was a surprising sound, clear and bright. Do you not understand? That is what makes your species special. You think courage is ordinary. You think sacrifice is normal. You do not even recognize the extraordinary things you do. Taiho did not know what to say. He had never thought of himself as brave. He had been terrified on Ardith 7. His hands had shaken the entire time. He had wanted to run away, to save himself, to let someone else be the hero. But he had not run. That was the thing. Despite the fear, despite the pain, despite every instinct screaming at him to flee, he had not run. The delegates think you are keeping me as a pet, he finally said, or using me as a tool. Let them think what they want. Yuna's eyes held stars that swirled with something like affection. The delegates see what they expect to see. They cannot imagine a queen loving a human. Love. The word struck Taiho like a physical blow. Your Majesty. Yuna, she corrected him. When we are alone, I am just Yuna. Yuna. The name felt strange and wonderful in his mouth. I am nobody. I have nothing to offer you. Your empire. Your power, your history, I am like a mayfly compared to you. I will live for a few more decades at most. You will live for thousands of years more. Yes, Yuna agreed. And every moment I spend with you will be worth more than centuries without you. She took his hand fully in hers, her silver fingers intertwining with his scarred ones. I have not asked you for anything yet, she said. I have not demanded anything. I have only wanted to know you, truly know you, before I do. She took a breath, and for a moment, she seemed almost nervous, almost uncertain, almost human. But I'm asking now. Stay with me, not as a guest, not as a translator, as something more. In the garden of crystallized light, surrounded by flowers that would never wilt and never die, Taiho looked into the eyes of a woman who had searched 200 worlds to find him. And he realized that sometimes, being nobody special was exactly what made a person extraordinary. The news spread through Valora like fire through dry grass. Queen Yuna, and the human were seen holding hands in the crystal gardens. Queen Yuna and the human were seen sharing meals in private chambers. Queen Yuna and the human were seen walking together under the three moons, talking in soft voices like lovers who had known each other for years instead of days. The theories stopped. The whispers changed. This was no longer about pets or tools or curiosities. This was about the throne of the Serani Empire. Lord Dravik stood in his chambers, perfectly still. His obsidian body did not need to move. His kind did not pace or fidget or show nervousness through motion. But inside, where no one could see, something dark was building. 3 years. He had waited 3 years for Queen Yuna. His species had cultivated relationships with the Serani for generations. Marriage between their peoples would unite two of the greatest powers in the known galaxy. The alliance would make them unstoppable. And now a human, a creature made of soft flesh and weak bones. A being who would die of old age before Dravik's body developed its first crack, threatened to take everything. This cannot be allowed, Dravik said to his advisors. His voice was like stone grinding against stone. This human must be removed. Perhaps he will simply leave, one advisor suggested. Humans are known for their short attention spans. He may grow bored. The queen will not grow bored. Dravik turned to face a window that looked out over Valora's gleaming landscape. I have watched her for 3 years. I know her patterns, her habits, her expressions. She has never looked at anyone the way she looks at this human. Then what do you propose? Dravik was silent for a long moment. His mind, slow but inexorable, worked through possibilities like water wearing down stone. There is an old law, he finally said, older than most species remember. The right of challenge. When a suitor believes another has stolen his rightful claim, he may issue formal combat. The victor earns the right to court. The loser withdraws. The advisors shifted uncomfortably. My lord, the right of challenge is ancient. It has not been invoked in thousands of years. But it has never been abolished. Dravik's obsidian features twisted into something resembling a smile. The human cannot refuse. To refuse would be to admit he has no honor, no claim, no right to stand beside the queen. And when he accepts, I will crush him. His bones will break beneath my hands. His soft flesh will tear. And Queen Yuna will see that he is nothing but a fragile creature playing in games too large for him. The next morning, Lord Dravik requested a formal audience before all the assembled delegates. Taiho was there, standing beside Queen Yuna on a platform of crystallized starlight. He looked uncomfortable in the formal clothes the Serani had provided him, dark fabric shot through with threads of silver. But he stood straight, and his eyes were calm. Dravik approached the platform with slow, heavy steps. Each footfall rang against the crystal floor like a hammer striking an anvil. I invoke the right of challenge, Dravik announced. His voice filled the great hall, silencing all other sounds. By the ancient laws that bind all peoples of the galaxy, I claim the right to combat for the honor of courting Queen Yuna of the Serani. The delegates erupted in shocked murmurs. The right of challenge. No one had expected this. No one had thought anyone would invoke such an old and violent custom. Queen Yuna rose from her throne. Her galaxy eyes had turned cold, dangerous. Lord Dravik, you would invoke blood laws at a summit of peace? The laws are clear, Your Majesty. Dravik's tone was respectful but firm. Any suitor may challenge another. The challenged party may not refuse without surrendering all claim. I challenged the human. Every eye turned to Taiho. He felt the weight of those gazes like physical pressure. Dreth warriors watched with hungry anticipation. Ilari scholars observed with cool curiosity. Keth diplomats leaned forward, their massive forms trembling with interest. And everywhere, in every expression, Taiho saw the same expectation. They expected him to refuse. They expected him to step back, admit he was outmatched, and disappear quietly from the Queen's side. It was the sensible choice, the logical choice, the choice that would let him keep his life. Taiho looked at Dravik. The Obsidian Lord towered over him, a mountain of living stone. His body was made for violence. His species had evolved as predators on a volcanic world where survival meant being harder and stronger than everything else. Compared to him, Taiho was soft, small, fragile. Then Taiho looked at Yuna. Her face was carefully controlled, but he could see the fear in her galaxy eyes. Fear for him. Fear of losing him. Fear of watching another person she cared about die. She had searched 200 worlds to find him. She had waited 2 years. She had opened her heart to a stranger simply because he had shown her kindness when she needed it most. How could he abandon her now? I accept, Taiho said. The hall fell silent. Complete silence. The kind of silence that comes before a storm. Taiho. Queen Yuna's voice carried warning and desperation and love all mixed together. You do not have to do this. There are other ways. There are not. Taiho kept his eyes on Dravik. If I refuse, I admit I have no right to stand beside you. If I refuse, I prove that everything they say about humans is true. That we are weak. That we are cowards. That we do not deserve a place among the stars. He finally looked at her, and his expression softened. You searched for 2 years to find me. Let me prove you did not search in vain. Dravik laughed. It was a terrible sound, like boulders crashing down a mountainside. Brave words, little human. But words do not win battles. Name your weapons, Taiho said quietly. Blades. Dravik's obsidian face twisted with cruel pleasure. Traditional combat. To the yield or to the death. Agreed. Taiho. Yuna tried again, stepping toward him, reaching for his hand. He took her hand briefly and squeezed it. His palm was warm against her cool silver fingers. I made you a promise once, he said softly. I told you that you were going to live. I kept that promise. He smiled, and it was the saddest and bravest smile she had ever seen. Let me keep one more. The combat was scheduled for dawn of the following day. The location would be Velora's great arena, where the crystal floors could be strengthened to withstand any violence. All delegates were invited to witness. That night, Taiho sat alone in his chambers. He had been given a standard-issue blade by Earth's diplomatic corps. Nothing special, nothing ceremonial. Just a simple weapon meant for emergencies. He held it in his hands and felt its weight. He was going to die. He knew this. Logically, mathematically, inevitably, he was going to die. Dravik was made of living stone. Human blades could barely scratch obsidian. Human strength was nothing compared to the power of the obsidian reach. This fight was impossible. But impossible was just a word. Taiho thought about Ardith 7. About running into a burning ship when every instinct screamed at him to flee. About carrying a dying alien through flames while his own skin melted. About promising a stranger that she would live, and then making that promise come true through sheer stubborn refusal to quit. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the smartest or the fastest or the most powerful. But they had something else. Something that had carried them from caves to stars. In the blink of a cosmic eye, they did not know when to give up. Taiho set down the blade and began to prepare. Not his weapon. Not his armor. His mind. Tomorrow, he would face a mountain. And mountains could be worn down. It just took time. Dawn came slowly to Velora, the first sun rising over crystal plains while the other two waited just below the horizon. The great arena filled with delegates from every corner of the known galaxy. They came to watch a human die. No one expected anything else. The betting pools among the Dreth warriors offered odds of 1,000 to 1 against Taiho. Even that seemed generous. The Ilari scholars had already written analyses of what the human's death would mean for Earth's diplomatic standing. The Geth bookmakers were taking bets on how many seconds the fight would last. The longest estimate was 2 minutes. Queen Yuna sat in the place of honor, her throne of woven starlight positioned above the arena floor. Her face showed nothing. Her hands gripped the armrest so hard that the starlight bent beneath her fingers. She had not slept. She had not eaten. She had spent the night alone, remembering the burning ship on Ardith 7 and the human who had carried her to safety. Now she was going to watch him die, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The arena doors opened. Lord Dravik entered first. He had shed his ceremonial armor, revealing his true form beneath. His body was pure obsidian, black as the space between stars, sharp at every edge. He carried a blade of condensed starfire, forged in the heart of a dying sun. The weapon hummed with barely contained energy, bright enough to hurt the eyes of anyone who looked at it directly. He moved like an avalanche, slow but unstoppable. The ground cracked beneath his weight with every step. The crowd cheered. They admired strength. They respected power. Dravik was both of these things made manifest. Then Taiho entered. He wore simple clothes. Gray fabric, worn soft from use. His blade was standard issue, nothing special. He walked with quiet steps that made no sound on the crystal floor. The crowd did not cheer. Some laughed. Others shook their heads in pity. This was not a battle. This was an execution. Taiho walked to the center of the arena and faced Dravik. The Obsidian Lord towered over him by more than a meter. His shadow swallowed Taiho completely. "You should have run," Dravik said. His voice rumbled like distant earthquakes. "I would have let you run. Now I will destroy you, and your queen will see what humanity truly is. Soft, weak, worthless." Taiho said nothing. His eyes were steady, focused. Not on Dravik's face, but on his feet. On his stance. On the way, he held his burning blade. The ritual master stepped forward. He was a Sarani elder, ancient even by their standards. His silver skin had faded to gray, and his galaxy eyes held only dim, distant stars. "The right of challenge has been invoked," the elder announced. "The terms have been accepted. Combat ends when one party yields or falls. There are no other rules. May the worthy prevail." He stepped back. Dravik attacked. The starfire blade swept down in a devastating arc, fast despite Dravik's massive size. The blow would have split Taiho in half, would have ended everything in a single stroke. But Taiho was not there. He had moved. Not fast, not gracefully, just efficiently. A simple step to the side. The starfire blade screamed past him, close enough to singe his hair. The crowd gasped. Dravik turned, annoyed. He attacked again. Another massive swing. Another lethal arc of burning light. Again, Taiho stepped aside. Not far, just enough. "Stand and fight." Dravik roared. His third attack came faster, harder. This time, Taiho could not dodge completely. The edge of the starfire blade caught his arm, burning through fabric and skin. Blood flowed. Taiho did not cry out. He kept moving, kept watching, kept stepping aside with small, careful movements. Minutes passed. Dravik's attacks grew more furious. He swung his blade in patterns designed to trap, to corner, to destroy. Each attack was powerful enough to shatter stone. Each attack missed or barely grazed. The crowd grew quiet. Something was wrong. Something they did not understand. Taiho was bleeding from half a dozen wounds now. His left arm hung loosely at his side, burned badly. His face was pale with pain. But he kept moving. He kept watching. He kept refusing to fall. And Dravik was slowing down. The Ilaria Archon leaned forward in his seat, his inner light brightening with sudden understanding. Persistence, he whispered to his scholars. The human is using persistence. Impossible, one scholar replied. No creature can outlast the obsidian reach through mere endurance. Humans can. The Archon's voice held something like awe. Their species evolved as persistence hunters. They do not need to be fast. They do not need to be strong. They simply need to not stop. They chase prey for days across endless plains until the prey collapses from exhaustion. It is how they survived on their world. On the arena floor, Dravik's starfire blade was growing dimmer. Obsidian warriors burned energy when they moved, and Dravik had been expending enormous amounts trying to catch one small, evasive human. What are you? Dravik demanded. His voice was strained now. His movements were becoming sluggish. Why will you not fall? Taiho did not answer. He was saving his breath. Every bit of energy went into one simple task. Keep moving. Keep surviving. Keep waiting. The crowd was standing now. They had come to watch an execution. They were witnessing something else entirely. Something they had never seen before. An hour passed. Then, too, Dravik's starfire blade flickered and died. He had burned through all its energy. He threw it aside and attacked with his bare hands, obsidian fists swinging with desperate fury. Taiho took the blows. Some of them. The ones he could not avoid. His ribs cracked. His face swelled. Blood dripped from his nose and mouth, but he kept moving, kept circling, kept waiting. Yield, Taiho said. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Yield now. Never. Dravik lunged forward, putting everything into one final attack. Taiho moved inside the swing. His simple blade, the one everyone had mocked, came up in a precise arc. It found the join between Dravik's arm and shoulder, a crack in the obsidian, where the stone was weakest. The blade sank in. Dravik screamed. It was a sound like mountains breaking. He fell to his knees, black blood flowing from the wound. Taiho stood over him, swaying with exhaustion. His blade pressed against Dravik's throat. Yield, he said again. The arena was silent. Every delegate held their breath. Even the floating lanterns seemed to pause. Dravik looked up at the human who had defeated him. This small, soft, fragile creature who refused to die, who refused to quit, who had simply kept going until the mountain itself grew tired. I yield, Dravik said. The arena erupted. Queen Yuna was already descending from her throne, running across the crystal floor in a way that no Sarani queen had ever run before. She reached Taiho just as his legs gave out, catching him in her arms before he could fall. You impossible fool, she whispered, tears streaming down her silver face. You beautiful, impossible fool. Taiho smiled up at her. His vision was blurring. His body was failing. But he was alive. He was victorious. He had kept his promise. You are going to live, he whispered, echoing words from 2 years ago. We both are. Yuna held him tightly as the crowd roared around them. She looked up at the assembled delegates, the strongest and wisest and most powerful beings in the galaxy, and saw something new in their eyes. They were looking at the human in her arms not with pity, not with amusement, not with dismissal. They were looking at him with fear. 1 month passed after the battle in Valora's great arena. Taiho spent most of that time healing. The Sarani had medical technology far beyond anything Earth possessed. Machines that could knit bone and regenerate tissue and erase scars as if they had never existed. The doctors offered to remove all traces of his injuries, to make his body perfect and new. Taiho refused. He kept the scars. The ones from Artist 7 and the new ones from the arena. They were part of his story now. Part of who he was. He would not erase them any more than he would erase his memories. Queen Yuna visited him every day. She brought him food he could not pronounce and books written in languages he did not read. She sat beside his bed and told him stories about her empire, her history, her long and lonely centuries on the throne. And she listened when he told her about Earth, about his family, about the small coastal town where he had learned to love the sound of waves. They talked like old friends, like lovers who had found each other after a long separation, like two people who had been waiting their whole lives without knowing what they were waiting for. When Taiho was finally strong enough to walk, Yuna took him to the highest tower in her palace. From there, they could see the entire summit of Velora spread out below them, the crystal gardens, the great halls, the ships from 1,000 worlds parked in geometric patterns on the landing fields. The delegates are leaving, Yuna said. The summit is ending. Soon Velora will be empty again. Where will you go? Taiho asked. Home. To the Sarani homeworld. My empire needs its queen. She turned to look at him, her galaxy eyes holding entire universes of emotion. I want you to come with me. As what? Yuna smiled. It was the real smile, the one she only showed to him. As my husband. My partner. My equal. Taiho looked out at the crystal landscape below. Somewhere down there, delegates were packing their ships and preparing for long journeys home. They would carry stories with them, stories about the human who had faced a mountain and refused to fall. Stories that would spread across the galaxy like ripples in a pond. I am still just a translator, he said softly. I have no power, no wealth, no famous name. I cannot give you anything that you do not already have 1,000 times over. You give me hope, Yuna replied. You give me joy. You give me someone who sees me as Yuna, not as the queen. After 3,000 years, do you understand how precious that is? Taiho understood. He understood loneliness. He understood the weight of being seen for what you could do rather than who you were. He understood the desperate hunger for connection, for someone who would run in the fire for you. The galaxy will not accept me, he said. Humans are new here. We are strangers. We are seen as weak and primitive and unworthy. They are already changing their minds. Yuna took his hand. Do you know what they are calling you? In the trading posts and military academies, in the royal courts and frontier colonies. They call you the human who would not fall. They tell stories about you to their children. The Dreth warriors speak of your endurance with respect. The Alari scholars study your battle as a masterwork of strategy. Even the Keth, who never praise anyone, say that you have the heart of a mountain. Taiho had not known this. He had been healing, isolated from the wider galaxy. The idea that beings across hundreds of worlds were telling stories about him felt strange and uncomfortable. I did not fight for fame, he said. I fought because I could not lose you. I know. Yuna squeezed his hand. That is why the stories matter. You did not seek glory. You sought love. You fought not as a warrior seeking victory, but as a man protecting what he cherished. That is something the galaxy has not seen in a very long time. They stood together in silence for a while, watching the ships rise from Velora's landing fields and disappear into the endless sky. Each ship carried a different story, a different perspective, a different piece of what had happened here. What about Earth? Taiho asked finally. My people, my world. If I become your husband, what happens to them? They become part of my family. Yuna's voice was firm. The Sarani Empire has always protected its own. Earth will have our technology, our knowledge, our protection. Your people will never have to face the galaxy alone. The weight of that promise settled on Taiho's shoulders. He had come to Velora as a nobody, a translator at the edge of a great gathering. Now he was being offered the chance to change the fate of his entire species. It was too much. It was too big. It was impossible. But impossible was just a word. Yes, Taiho said. Yuna blinked. Yes, yes, I will come with you. Yes, I will be your husband. Yes, I will stand beside you as your partner and your equal. He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. 2 years ago, I made you a promise in a burning ship. I told you that you were going to live. I kept that promise. He smiled. Now I make you another one. I promise to stay. I promise to love you. I promise to be there when you need me, for as long as my short human life allows. Yuna laughed, and the sound was like silver bells and distant stars. Your life will not be short. The Serani have ways of extending the years of those we love. If you wish it, you can live as long as I do. Taiho thought about that. Centuries of life. Thousands of years beside this woman who had searched the galaxy to find him. It was more than he had ever dreamed of. More than he had ever imagined possible. I wish it, he said simply. The announcement came 3 days later. Broadcast to every corner of known space. Queen Yuna of the Serani Empire. Ruler of 200 worlds, keeper of ancient secrets. One of the most powerful beings in the galaxy had chosen her husband. He was a human, a translator, a man who had been nobody until he ran into fire for a stranger. The galaxy's response was immediate and overwhelming. Andreth Prime. Warriors raised their glasses to the human who would not fall. On the Ilari homeworld, scholars began new studies of human biology and psychology. On 100 different worlds, beings who had dismissed humanity as insignificant suddenly began paying attention. And on Earth, in a small coastal town where the waves still crashed against familiar shores, Taiho's parents received a message from their son. It told them everything: the rescue, the search, the fight, the love. It told them that their boy, their quiet son who had always preferred watching to being watched, had become something extraordinary. His mother cried. His father laughed. They had always known he was special, even when he could not see it himself. In the palace of the Serani Empire, Taiho stood before a mirror in ceremonial robes, preparing for his wedding. The fabric was woven from starlight and shadows, shifting colors every time he moved. He looked like a stranger. He felt like a stranger. Yuna appeared behind him, her reflection joining his in the mirror. She was dressed in silver and white, beautiful beyond description. Are you ready? She asked. No, Taiho admitted. I am terrified. Good. She smiled and took his arm. So, am I. We can be terrified together. They walked out of the chamber and into the great hall where thousands of guests waited. Representatives from every major power in the galaxy had come to witness this moment. Humans stood among them for the first time as honored guests, not as curiosities or afterthoughts. The ceremony was ancient and beautiful, spoken in a language older than human civilization. Taiho did not understand most of the words, but he understood the meaning: commitment, partnership, love that would last longer than stars. When it was done, Queen Yuna turned to face her people, her empire, her subjects, the countless beings who looked to her for leadership. This is my husband, she announced. Her voice carried to every corner of the hall, to every ship in orbit, to every world that watched through broadcast feeds. He was a guest when he came to us. He was a stranger. He was nobody special. She smiled at Taiho with all the love in her galaxy eyes. And he is the best of us. The bravest. The most stubborn. The most human. She raised their joined hands. The galaxy thought humans were just visitors here, newcomers playing in games too large for them. But they were wrong. Humans belong among the stars. They have earned their place. not through conquest or politics or wealth, but through the only thing that truly matters. She looked at Taiho, and he looked back at her, and between them flowed a connection that transcended species and history and the vast emptiness of space. Through love, she said. Through courage. Through the simple refusal to give up. The crowd erupted into cheers. The galaxy watched and wondered and began to understand. Humanity had arrived, and they were not just guests anymore.